A very good day to all. So we'll be discussing about the new topic in today's lecture. So I would like you all to guess the topic. As you can see from this image, the topic is about some kind of manufacturing process. As we know, since the subject is manufacturing process, this topic has to be some kind of manufacturing. So what type of manufacturing is what? I would like you all to guess. So those who know the answers, kindly post in the comment section. Getting back to the topic, today we'll be discussing about sand casting. So there are different types of casting process available in manufacturing process. So one particular type of casting is called as sand casting. So what are the significant points of the sand casting process? So what we'll be discussing in today's topic. First of all, what is sand casting? So sand casting is one of the most widely used manufacturing process for manufacturing metals. So important point here is manufacturing of metals. So in manufacturing of metals, sand casting plays a major role. For manufacturing plastics, another type of casting is used, which is called as injection molding. We will discuss that when we go to the plastics in the unit 5. So here, it's one of the most widely used process for manufacturing of metals. So metals in the sense, any metal, it may be steel, it may be crude iron, which is pig iron, wrought iron, cast iron. Predominantly, it's used for manufacturing of cast iron parts, copper, bronze, silver, some type of aluminum components. For example, if we take an engine block, it is made from casting of aluminum. So such metals can be manufactured using this sand casting process. So as you can see in this image, this is a cut section view of the sand casting process. So here, the molten metal will be poured inside a cavity. So we'll discuss each part, step-by-step process of sand casting process in the subsequent slides. First, what you have to understand is what is sand casting process. So sand casting process, the process of melting the metal in a furnace and then pouring it into a cavity. So the cavity is the place where molten metal will be poured, and it will be in the shape of the component required. For example, if you need a dumbbell, so you are lifting dumbbells. So if you need a dumbbell, then the sand casting or the cavity has to be in the shape of dumbbell. So that cavity can be made with the help of a pattern. So what is these technical terms we will discuss now. So first, what is a mold? So mold cavity I discussed. So what is a mold cavity is that it's a physical model of the casting which you have to make. In the case we discussed about the dumbbell. For example, if you need to make a dumbbell, then the mold cavity should be in the shape of a dumbbell. So how that shape is made? In sand. So in order to make that shape in the sand, you have to first place a dumbbell shaped object on the sand and then press it against the sand. And once the shape is removed, the sand will be made into the dumbbell shape. So in our childhood, you would have played with the sand. So we'll make in our sandbox, you will put objects, we'll press the object, and when we remove the object, a cavity in the shape of the object will be obtained. So that is the base for this sand casting process. So similarly here, the cavity will be made. So the material which is used to make that cavity, so that material is called as a pattern. So next we will move on to important terms in sand casting process. As you can see, these are some of the important parts of sand casting process. So now we'll see each part one by one. What are the steps involved in sand casting process? So like that, we will see each part one by one. So first step in sand casting process is pattern making. So pattern making is making the shape of the object which you have to make in wood, wax or silica. For example, if you need dumbbell, as you discussed, if you need a dumbbell, then you have to make the shape of dumbbell in a wood, or it may be made from wax, plastic, etc. So that primary shape is called as the pattern. So pattern will always be a bit larger than the output component required. So why that is, we will discuss in the subsequent topics. So if anyone is interested in why the pattern is always made larger than the actual casting required, you can refer the book and answer me in the next class. And then core making. So core is, as we all know, the meaning for core is the inner part. Inner part of the object is called as core. You can would have discussed about the core of the sun. So similarly here, core is not a mandatory part. For a solid pattern, core is not required. But if you are making a hollow pattern, for example, if you are making a pipe, so pipe has to be solid in the outside, but it has to be hollow on the inside. So for such cases, what we will do is we will place a material inside the mold cavity. So once the pattern is removed, the remaining shape, it is called as mold cavity. So inside the mold cavity, we'll be placing an object so that metal solidifies around that part. So that part is called as core. So core is typically made from sand, refractory sand. So once the molten metal solidifies, the core inside part can be knocked down using hammer, and we will get a hollow cavity. So that is core. So once pattern and core is made, the next process is molding. So what is molding is that placing the pattern inside the sand, pressing the sand so that the shape is obtained in the sand. So that process is called as molding. So once the pattern is removed, the mold cavity will be remaining. So what you have to do next is we'll be pouring the molten metal inside the mold cavity. As you can see in this image, we'll be pouring the molten metal into the mold cavity. So once the molten metal solidifies, then we can remove the pattern. So this process is simply called as sand casting process. So there are minute steps involved in this sand casting process. So we'll discuss that. So what are the process involved in the sand casting is that once you make the pattern, you will place in the sand, you will make a cavity, and you will pour the molten metal into the cavity, mold cavity, and then once it solidifies, you can remove it and you get the required shape. So that is called as pattern making process. So in this process, the most important step is making the pattern according to the required shape. So pattern can be made from any material. It can be made from wood, can be made from plastic or any metal. Important thing is it should be up to the required dimension. So once it is made, you can place it on the sand and give pressure. When the pressure is applied, it settles, the sand settles, and once the pattern is removed, you will get the mold cavity. Once the mold cavity is obtained, you will pour the molten metal into the cavity. Since this is the cut section, what image you are seeing here is the cut section, but in the actual image, you will not be able to see the mold cavity. So how to identify whether the molten metal is poured inside properly? So for that, they are giving two spaces. One is runner, another one is called as riser, as you can see in this image. So the molten metal will be poured in the pouring basin, and if the entire section of the mold cavity is filled, then the molten metal will come up through the riser. So once the riser is filled, we can assume that the mold cavity is filled. So that's the purpose of this runner and risers. So once the metal solidifies, the metal will also be present in the runner riser cavities. So such irregular sections can be cut out and the definitive final product can be obtained. So this is the basic introduction to the sand casting process. To give you a quick recap, today we discussed about the sand casting process. So as the name indicates, here sand is used to make the casting process. So what is casting? Casting is a process of making a mold cavity to the required shape by using a pattern. So pattern, what is pattern? Pattern is the replica of the shape which we need to obtain using the casting process. So once the pattern is placed inside the mold cavity, inside the sand and removed, mold cavity is obtained. Then molten metal will be poured inside the mold cavity. And once the molten metal solidifies, you will get the final product. So this is the basic introduction to the sand casting process. Hope you all understood this topic. So in the next class, we will get into the detailed process of sand casting process and what are the various steps involved in the sand casting process. So a quick thinker to you. While coming to the next class, as I mentioned in the class, the pattern is always made larger than the final output casting. So why that is done? So anyone interested can search the topic and answer in the next class. So thank you, students. We will see in another lecture. Have a good day.